when silence held more power than words. Some moments in the White House are defined not by what is spoken, but by what is left unsaid. A single pause can shift the future more than any speech. And on one unforgettable day, silence became the most powerful force in the room. To understand why this moment still matters, we have to look at the delicate balance that shapes every presidency. Decisions are formed through debate, analysis, and strategy, but they are also shaped by hesitation, by uncertainty, by the instinct to wait, when speaking too soon could unravel everything. Silence is often dismissed as indecision. Yet within these walls, silence could be a tool, a shield, or a warning. The day began with a briefing that appeared routine. Advisors gathered around the long table, notes in hand, ready to present their recommendations on a matter of growing urgency. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. A disagreement had been unfolding quietly for weeks, and now it hovered over the meeting like a storm cloud. Every person in the room felt it, though no one dared to address it outright. At first, the conversation moved predictably. Statistics were shared, projections were debated, possible outcomes were compared. Yet each exchange carried a subtle strain, as if everyone's sense of real decision was still hiding behind the data. Something was missing, an insight, an explanation, a perspective no one had voiced. Then came the moment that shifted the tone of the entire day. A question was asked, simple, direct, unavoidable. But instead of an immediate answer, the room fell into a heavy stillness. Eyes moved carefully from face to face. Breathing slowed. The silence deepened until it felt like a presence, something alive and undeniably powerful. At first, it seemed like hesitation. But the longer it stretched, the more it became clear. This was not uncertainty. This was protection. Someone in that room knew what speaking would unleash, and their silence revealed more truth than any explanation could have. That was the moment when the dynamic changed. Whispers of doubt began forming in the minds of those present. What wasn't being said? Why wasn't it being said? And who was benefiting from the quiet? The silence lingered long enough to reshape the room. Advisors exchanged cautious glances, each trying to decipher meaning behind the unanswered question. It wasn't like this team to hesitate. They were known for sharp clarity, for moving quickly when the stakes demanded it. And yet, here they were, frozen, waiting for someone to speak first. When the conversation finally resumed, it did so with a different tone. Words came slower. Sentences felt rehearsed. The confidence that usually anchored these meetings had loosened, replaced by a quiet tension threading through every comment. It was clear that those present were choosing their language with deliberate care, as a misstep could trigger consequences none were ready to face. The president watched closely, noticing what others tried to conceal. It wasn't the data that was causing the discomfort. It was something deeper, an unspoken conflict that had been growing beneath the surface. A contradiction hidden within the policy, a disagreement masked by polite cooperation, or perhaps a decision already made by someone who had no intention of admitting it. Every attempt to steer the conversation back to normal only made the strain more visible. Advisors referenced outdated reports. Others avoided eye contact when their expertise was needed most. The rhythm of the meeting shifted from collaboration to containment, with each person trying to protect something they weren't willing to reveal. And slowly, a pattern emerged. The silence wasn't random. It centered around a single point in the briefing, a timeline that didn't align with previous discussions, a detail that had not been disclosed, a decision that had been influenced without the president's full awareness. The more the team spoke around it, the clearer the truth became. Someone had acted quietly, shaping events behind the scenes. The silence was not indecision. It was a barrier built to keep that action hidden until its consequences became unavoidable. As the briefing continued, the weight of that realization tightened the room. The president sensed a shift, recognizing that the real debate wasn't happening aloud. It was unfolding in glances, hesitations, and unfinished sentences. A quiet conflict had taken root, one that threatened to break open if the right question, or the wrong one, was asked again. Beneath the surface, the meeting had become a battlefield made not of arguments, but of what no one dared to say. As the afternoon unfolded, the quiet tension that had gripped the room began to transform into something sharper. The advisors who once moved in coordinated rhythm now found themselves drifting into separate corners of thought. Each one carried a version of the truth, yet none were willing to be the first to lay it bare. The silence from earlier had not faded. It had evolved into a barrier dividing the West Wing. The president reopened the briefing with a direct request for clarity, hoping to steer the conversation back to solid ground. But even this push for transparency only heightened the strain. Those who normally spoke with conviction now delivered half answers, careful phrasings that avoided the heart of the issue. Others, usually measured and precise, offered explanations that contradicted details from previous discussions. The inconsistency gave way to suspicion. It became clear that the team was no longer navigating a shared problem. They were navigating each other. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if every person sensed that a single misstep could expose a fault line no one wanted to acknowledge. The president watched this unfold with growing concern, realizing that the challenge they faced was not merely strategic. It was deeply human. Then the first crack appeared. An advisor, frustrated by the evasions, challenged a colleague's version of events. The exchange began quietly, but carried an edge that caught everyone's attention. Another advisor intervened, attempting to smooth the tension, but their reassurance only highlighted the divide. More contradictions surfaced. More timelines failed to align. And with each passing moment, the truth drifted farther from reach. The conflict intensified as loyalties emerged. Some advisors defended the choices made in silence, arguing that quick action had been necessary. Others insisted that the president should have been informed sooner. The disagreement was no longer hidden. It pulsed through every word, every gesture, every moment of strained diplomacy at the table. By now, the silence that once dominated the room had given way to an entirely new force. Confrontation cloaked in civility. Voices stayed calm, but the message behind them grew fiercer. Each advisor fought, not against the president, but against the fear of what their colleagues might reveal next. The meeting had become a test of integrity, ambition, and survival. And just when the conflict seemed to settle into a fragile stalemate, a detail surfaced, a detail so small it might have been overlooked on another day. It contradicted a key claim made earlier. It exposed an action taken without approval. And it revealed that the silence at the start of the meeting had not been hesitation at all. It had been strategy. The revelation rippled through the room, shifting the balance entirely. The unspoken battle had reached its breaking point, and now the truth stood just beyond reach, waiting for someone brave enough to step forward and name it. The room fell still as the contradiction settled into undeniable clarity. The president leaned forward, sensing that the moment everyone had avoided was finally here. No one moved. No one spoke. The truth hovered like a weight suspended between them, demanding recognition. And when the silence finally broke, it did so with a quiet admission that reshaped the entire conversation. The advisor at the center of the timeline discrepancy exhaled slowly before acknowledging what the room already suspected. A decision had been made without full consultation. It had been justified as urgent, necessary, efficient. But in the shadow of that choice, communication faltered, trust thinned, and the administration drifted unknowingly into a position that now required careful repair. The admission did not come easily, nor did it arrive with excuses. It arrived with the gravity of someone who knew the consequences would extend far beyond a single meeting. The tension softened, but only slightly. The president listened closely, weighing not just the words, but the reasoning behind them. The issue was no longer the silent moment that had sparked the day's unease. It was a deeper lesson in how fragile collaboration becomes when even one thread is pulled without warning. The White House operates on precision, and a single unilateral step can shift the entire structure. In the minutes that followed, the group worked to realign their strategy. What had been fractured needed rebuilding. What had been hidden needed illumination. And what had once been protected by silence now had to be addressed openly if the administration hoped to regain its footing. The president set a path forward that balanced accountability with momentum, ensuring that the misstep would not define their course, but would reshape how decisions were made from that day on. As the meeting concluded, the advisor stepped out of the room, carrying a new understanding of the power they held and the responsibility that came with it. The silence that had once controlled the narrative no longer lingered. In its place stood clarity, hard-earned and necessary. The White House had endured another test of trust, and though the day left its mark, it also left a reminder. Sometimes the quietest moments reveal the most about who leads, who follows, and who must speak when silence becomes too heavy to bear. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.